All right, welcome back to Jeff Koinange live at Citizen Television, one-on-one with embattled IEBC CEO Ezra Chiloba. We're asking the question, should he resign? And the numbers are basically the same, Monica, 56-44. Okay, so let's go straight to the questions, and there are plenty of them. Welcome to JKL, first of all.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court ruled there was no culpability or criminal act on the part of the IEBC. All right? There's a tweet here by Kumekucha Phil, who says, Raila Odinga speaks for approximately 10 million Kenyans, plus minus, and he has said with proof that Ezra Chiloba belongs in jail. He says you belong in jail. What do you tell him?
Well, I will not be going out to respond to him. He's among many others who've raised concern about how the last election was managed, and that matter was prosecuted at the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court rendered its verdict on the same. But as you also say, when the Supreme Court made its decision, it was very clear that there was no evidence presented before it that will implicate anyone. But most importantly, it also said that there's a decision of the majority that they could not find fingerprints of any individuals to be held responsible. And in the circumstance, of course, they also stated that if there were failures and there were systemic issues that the Commission needed to reflect upon and see how to improve the management of elections, including the fresh presidential election. So it's not so much about us as an individual. If we have to be true to the decision of the Supreme Court, then we must reflect and identify what these systemic issues that the Commission ought to be addressing going forward.
Look, how does it feel to go from Chilo Bay, everybody was talking about Chilo Bay, to Chilo Bye-Bye, to Chiroba, and now kind of Chilo back?
Well, Fred, Jeff, last time I had an interview like this, it was immediately after the declaration of results, and I was asked about the same question, and I said, soon and very soon, Kenyans are going to forget, and I call it national infatuation of the moment because of the events that were happening then. But I think on a more serious note, that tells you something about life, that things are never static. You have to go through different moments, and the question is whether you as an individual, you're ready to go through that particular pattern of life. And as far as I'm concerned, that was not the most important thing. What's the most important is I have a duty, I have responsibilities bestowed upon me on behalf of the people of Kenya.
Do you think you conducted a free, fair, credible election? Do you think so, honestly?
Honestly, deep down my heart, I can tell you that we conducted an election that was far much better managed than any other election in the history of this country. And I'll tell you, so many people write me emails, send me messages, both local and international, and they all admit that the election was far much better managed than ever before. Of course, until the Supreme Court. And all of us, since the 1st of September, we were waiting for the details from the Supreme Court. And what became evident at the Supreme Court is that we needed to just improve on our processes, and especially when it comes to results transmission, where we were relying on technology, and also standardization of the forms that we use in the electoral process. So if we improve on that, I think we can only have better elections.
Look, we don't want to point fingers at anyone. Right. We don't want to blame anyone, right? It's not a blame game. But there was a memo that leaked from Chairman Wafula Chebukati. Memo that leaked, and he basically threw you under the bus.
I don't think it was him who leaked the memo. So if you're talking about throwing someone under the bus, I don't think he's the one who was responsible. As the chairman of the commission, he had issues of concern, and he thought that those issues be better be responded to by the accounting officer and the CEO, and that's why he wrote to me.
And you responded?
Yes, I responded to the memo. And when we did that as a commission, we came together, we looked at the issues of concern that the chairman had raised, and the commission also looked at the responses that we had provided as the entire team of the secretariat.
How come yours didn't leak?
Well, again, I said that is not a concern for us. It's unfortunate that it actually, the memo that was sent to me leaked. But that is not the issue here. The issue is whether the issues that chairman had raised as issues of concern were responded to. Of course, we cannot compete between ourselves or myself with any other person who's trying to influence the processes within the commission. Yeah, but I don't think it was
okay,
the chairman.
Let's go through
Yeah.
the leaked memo. Let's start with servers. There was talk that you all, IEBC, refused to open the servers. What do you have to say?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we got to that particular conclusion, Jeff, because if you look at the history of that order of the court that demanded that we give access to the petitioners, as well as a third respondent, that was President Uhuru Kenyatta, as agents. What we did is that immediately the order was issued, the team met, both IEBC's team and all parties in court and the registrar, and agreed on the modalities of how to access information. And if you read the report by the experts, you realize that eventually the commission actually gave access. Only that because of the mechanism and the procedures that were followed to provide that particular access, it took a little longer. So the assumption that the court actually made at the time was that it was going to be easy. You'll get to the IBC, then it'll be easier for the actors to be able to get access.
Yeah.
It wasn't as easy, and partly is because of the security aspects of the system, and also the collaboration and communication between us and the service providers. Our servers were cloud-based, based in Europe, and we needed robust coordination at the time. And when that coordination happened, we eventually had the system or the access provided at about 3 p.m. On the last day, which was about 2 hours before the report was to be submitted to the court.
So you're saying the servers were opened?
Yes, servers were opened. And if you read that report, it actually acknowledges that servers were opened, and had there been more time granted, then there will have been full access to all the participants. Unfortunately, the time for the court was not available, and they needed to make a decision.
And how come nobody told the rest of us, or did we just overlook that?
No, it's only maybe people did not pay greater interest in the report of the experts, but the experts were very clear. There was partial access, partly because the servers were open, and had we been given more time, then that could have been made possible.
Yeah.
And something else, Jeff, about the servers and access. The technical people tell us, if you look at the standards or security standards that you apply on a secure system, if it's easier for someone to just get into your offices and access the servers in the manner in which we assume they're going to be accessed within 1 hour, within 2 hours, then it tells you that perhaps you're not secure. But the system that we have, the levels of security that were put in place was such that it was not a walk in the park. It was not an easy endeavor. So had we had this understanding across the board among all the actors, including the court, perhaps we could have done justice to the process.
Yeah. Tell me something. The server, is it in a cloud? Is that where it is?
Yes, yes.
It's up there in the cloud?
No, when they say in the cloud,
I mean,
that is not located here, but it's somewhere.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And by the way, there's still that infrastructure in terms of that access is still available. And because the Commission has been interested in bring a closure to these issues about logs and servers in terms of what happened during the election, it has approved an independent audit of the system so that Kenyans may be told or may find out what actually happened, so that we have a closure on this subject. And
is it still Saffron Morpho that's going to deal with it?
In terms of Saffron Morpho is our main supply of technology for the election.
Yes.
They still host or deal with our servers.
Yes.
But when talking about independent audit, is a separate company.
Back to the servers, because Saffron Morpho was saying they would have to reconfigure the servers in time for this fresh election.
No, they were saying many things about how we get ready for the election.
Yes.
Because the election is not just about servers. It's about getting the 40,000 plus kits for the 40,000 polling station. And that means you have to collect all the kits from the polling stations after, of course, the August 8th election. Bring them back, refurbish them, reinstall the software, and that reinstallation must be a software that has been improved upon. We've done some modification to ensure that we are more compliant with the Supreme Court decision, as well as ensuring that we have the security that is adequate for.
And are they ready?
Yeah, now they're in the process.
The kits? They will be ready for the 26th?
Yes, they'll be very much ready. We've been working for the last 3 weeks. Yeah, so we're on course.
Okay, speaking of kits, on election day, there was a complaint that the KIMS kits were switched off.
Not on the election day.
Well,
I think the issue was that
when they were getting from point A to point B, they were switched off.
What specifically was switched off?
The GPRS.
Now, there are technical issues around that issue. I think it's one of the issues that my chairman raised as one of the areas of concern, and we've been able to respond to it. GPRS, I'm meant to understand, is basically the manner in which you define the network coverage that you have, 2G, 3G or 4G. Of course, for sure, if you're going to use 3G, 4G, and the fact that we transmitted results on all the keys, that means the GPRS was active. But I think the issue was about GPS and whether we were going to use GPS to be able to locate the kits. And if you look at our technical specifications that we gave to the supplier, GPS was not one of the critical specifications that we included in the tender document. But that does not mean that we are not able to trace the kits, especially from the polling stations in terms of our distribution. Each kit has a unique number for ease of identification, and that number is randomly selected. That means you cannot predict the polling station number in as far as the kit allocation is concerned. And that is a security measure that is inbuilt to enable us to trace that particular kit when required. So even in this coming election, is more or less the same mechanism that we are deploying. But before, when we claim that on that date we had switched it off, that's not the correct position.
No. Okay. Results from non-prescribed forms, the bone of contention, Form 34A and Form 34B.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So, if we are to go with a minor Kiai ruling, if you will, it's gonna all the tallying will come from the Form 34B.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Which is coming from the constituency level.
Right.
Not the 40,000 plus polling stations.
That was our interpretation.
Right?
Right.
Does that make your work easier?
Well, maybe to put that into perspective, that 35 days before the election, we had the Maina Kiai Court of Appeal judgment, which to a large extent affected the manner in which we organized the election, in particular the results management pathway. And the challenge that we faced was, how do we ensure that results from the constituency get to the National Tallying Center in a more secure manner? Because under the Maina Kiai case, the assumption was that the returning officers will not have to troop, or to, that's the term they used, will not have to troop to Bomas of Kenya to submit the physical forms of 34Bs. And the court said that the returning officers shall electronically transmit their forms to the National Tallying Center. So our understanding and our interpretation was that we were going to have returning officers prepare their results, and since their results are final, there was no need for us to verify those 34Bs against 34S. After all, the returning officers at the constituency level will have done that job already. So that's why we worked with 34Bs. But the Supreme Court, of course, now says that we need now to have 34Bs as well as 34S so that we verify the authenticity of those results. Which now means that we have to change our results pathway now. And what we're going to see in the coming election is that the returning officers shall be required to physically deliver 34Bs and 34S to the national returning officer, who is the chairman of the commission.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Let me see if I get this straight. In the August 8th election,
right,
what were you basing your counts on? 34A or initially before you got the Bs?
No, 34Bs. We waited for 291 34Bs before we declared the final result. Yes, and our logic was very simple. Is the returning officer who is responsible in ensuring that the polling station results are reflected correctly in 34Bs. And then their role was to submit it to the National Tallying Center. And when it came to the National Tallying Center, our interpretation of the Maina Kiai case was the national returning officer's responsibility was to ensure that the successful candidate had met the threshold set out under the Constitution, which was ensure that you get 50% plus one vote and at least 25% in 24 of the counties.
Correct.
And that is how we interpreted the Maina Kiai case. And that's how then our pattern that led to the results that were nullified was actually structured.
Okay, I'll get to the ROs, returning officers, in a moment, and also the chief returning officer.
Right.
Because there are new electoral laws that are probably going to be in place in the next few days. I'm going to ask for your comment in a moment. But first, there was also more than 9,000 plus logins, you know this, using the chairman's login. How does that happen?
First of all, there are not 9,000 logins.
9,000 plus?
There are 9,000 transactions.
Okay.
Yeah, logins is
so
that
someone
means
logged in more than 9,000 times?
No. Somebody transacted or processed data in different ways, 9,000 plus. Okay?
Using the chairman's login?
Using the chairman's login account. What that means is this. When the Maina Kiai case got us, and we were now to transmit results electronically from the constituency to the National Tallying Center, which was not our plan initially. Our initial plan was the the returning officers from the constituency would physically deliver the forms to the National Tallying Center. But because of the decision of the Court of Appeal, we said then we must come up with a framework that will allow that transmission to happen, which was outside the KIMS system, because by that time the KIMS system had been set up already. So this transmission from the constituency to the National Tallying Center was an additional mechanism to allow us to comply with the Maina Kiai case. So each returning officer, the 291 plus the chairman, were given special accounts to enable them to complete that transfer from the constituency to the National Tallying Center. And then the data will be received on chairman's account, which is at the National Tallying Center. And basically, the role of that account was you receive, you confirm this form is from this particular constituency, okay, transferred from that particular folder to the relevant folder, download it, and print it to allow the agents and our officers at the auditorium at Bomas of Kenya to process the results. So we saw that account as a transactional account. So, and anytime there was a form that came in that was not properly formatted, for example, or was not properly signed, we'll be able to detect it. Then there were officers who will call back we'll call back the returning officers to ensure that they send the correct form.
Why were they sending the wrong form? What was wrong?
You know, sometimes, of course, because they had this Excel sheet of preparing Form 34Bs.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll make mistakes because of margins, you print wrongly, or when you're scanning the form on the printer, then through the system, you make mistakes, or some pages are truncated. So you just had to ensure that the right form has been sent. So every time it will come to the chairman's, that particular account, it will be processed. Relevant information will be obtained, then decisions will be made. And the other bit is that that account was actually active from the 31st of July. That is 80 days before the election, up to the 13th of August, 7 days after the election. But the previous transactions were basically training, officers, testing, to just ensure that the system, which was very new, was actually working. So that is what ended up accounting for the 9,000 transaction, including just moving a file from one folder to another.
It's a transaction.
Is a transaction. Yeah, so it was, and experts tell me that those were normal transactions.
So you're saying there was nothing untoward, there was nothing illegal?
Nothing illegal, and I believe that the officers who did that were doing it in good faith. But of course we learn lessons from that, in the sense that if we're given another chance, given the manner in which these issues have been raised and reacted to, I think we'll do a better job. Perhaps change the account name so that it's neutral, and also have proper protocols that will ensure certainty, transparency, and accountability, so that people have faith in a system like that.
Were some 34Bs not signed? Were there cases of that?
In as far as I'm concerned, all 34Bs were signed.
And A's?
As we had 40,000
polling stations,
40,000 polling stations,
Yeah.
34 A's. Some, of course, you'll find that some were not signed, but they were not significant. And if a form is not signed, then the returning officer has power in terms of what they need to do when it comes to the authenticity of that particular form.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Form 34Bs, we have seen that all the forms were signed.
So if you've crossed your T's and dotted your I's, why is NASA so adamant about their irreducible minimums, including you going home and your chief IT officer as well, and other people?
I mean, many of us. I mean, they have a right to express themselves, express their disappointment. We live in a free society, a democratic society, where people are supposed to be given a chance to express their concern. And I don't think it's improper for them to actually present those minimum demands, because they form the basis of discussions in terms of how we make our electoral process much better. So we have received those demands, and as a commission we've been deliberating on them. And on 22nd of September this month, the chairman actually responded to those concerns. And what we've been seeing in the recent past is, of course, efforts to ensure that we come to a common understanding in terms of what is possible for the short term and what's not possible, and especially if you want to have a successful election come 26th October. Yeah.
So it seems like you've covered your bases so well. So what could have gone so wrong? I mean, I don't get it.
Well, this election was different. The one that we just concluded and nullified by the Supreme Court was different. We've been trying to reflect in terms of what actually went wrong. Because in terms of planning, we planned properly. In terms of execution, I think we carried out some of the most efficient operations ever when it comes to elections management. And if you read the Supreme Court decision also, they don't seem to have any qualms with the other processes around the election, all the way to counting of the results. The issue became transmission of those results, which we acknowledge there were challenges, and which challenges we must be able to fix if we must meet the same standards as the court has stated. And the other issue was the use of standardized forms. So if we do not use, if we want to guarantee the integrity of the election, we need to have some standardization when it comes to the forms that we use. Something that was not even there, had never been there until this year. So when we say that we're going to put in standards to ensure that our forms are easy to trace, they have security features, we became victims of our own success. That some of our officers did not follow procedure, did not comply, or they failed to just follow the due process.
Yeah.
That's why we got where we got.
And maybe that's why there's going to be some laws coming in, and we'll talk about that in a short while. But quick question, Al Ghurair, they're still going to print the papers?
Yes. As per the decision of the commission, as we stand now, that's the only option we have if we have to get ready for this election. That decision was made last week, and we're already in touch with Al Ghurair, trying to see how to secure ballot papers. What we just need to do is to see how to get all stakeholders on board, just the way we did last time. Because at the end of the day, it's our election. There are things we are able to do in the short term. And in this case, Al Ghurair became the only option because we have a 2-year contract with them.
Right.
Yeah.
Some people don't want Al Ghurair. They say Al Ghurair is, there's a conflict of interest somewhere or other.
That matter was resolved at the Court of Appeal, even before we went to the last election.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about this matter? Ekuru Aukot, is he on the ballot or not?
Yeah, Ekuru, first of all, Ekuru is my friend. I've known him for many years.
Here comes the punch.
Yes. You can't believe that. We fight in court, but after 2 days we'll call each other. Okay. From where we sit, we looked at who will be the candidates for this coming election. We looked at the Supreme Court decision in the Raila Odinga petition of 2013. And there's an observation which was made to the effect that only the petitioners, successful petitioners, and the incumbent president will be the candidates for this coming election. So that is how we interpret it. And it meant, therefore, that Ekuru will not be on the ballot. I know he's going to court. We've also gone to court to defend the position. Yeah. But then the court is going to guide on what happens. Now, the challenge we're going to face now is that...
the challenge if he's on, or if he's not?
If the court declares that he's on, there'll be some operational challenges there. As we were saying, we got 21 days to the election. One of the things we need to get right is technology, and especially the component of results transmission. So the software is updated, and we've already configured the kits. There's some kits which are being packed already. So 7 days before the election, we need to start distributing those kits. And if there's no candidate now, it means therefore that it'd be very difficult to include that particular candidate, and if we expect to use the results transmission system. So there are those operational challenges that we are going to face.
Yeah. Other operational challenges, NASA demonstrations every Monday, every Friday. Are you bothered?
Well, I've said before that this country, if we have to grow as a democracy, let each person be free to express himself or herself, because that's how we grow. And them coming to anniversary towers or wherever they are across the country, it's their right to do that, and let us give them the freedom to do that, because today it's them, tomorrow it might be me. It might be me, and I would like to have the same forum. But the bottom line is, what are the issues that are being prosecuted out there? Can those issues be handled? So as an individual, I'm not so much concerned that they're demonstrating. What I'm concerned about is whether, as a country, we can come together and resolve the issues that affect us all.
Yeah. Look, I want to take a break, come back, talk about the new electoral laws, possible ones, including jail term for returning officers who don't sign the forms you're talking about. And also the fact that maybe not only Chebukati should be able to announce as a chief returning officer. And going after Safaricom. Why just Safaricom? They're not your only provider, right?
I mean, there are many.
There are many.
Yeah, there are many. Yeah.
And you know, bottom line, I mean, you must have some severe ulcers from August the 8th till October the 4th.
Jeff, I mean, that's a story for another day. But you got a job to do.
Story for a book, maybe. Let's take a break, come back. Monica, what are the numbers? We're asking, should Ezra Chiloba resign as CEO of the IEBC? What are our numbers, Monica? Are the servers working?
56.
Oh, here we go. 57% say yes. 43% say no.
Why is the number constant?
Is the number constant?
Yes.
No, we were down to 56.
But that's what happened at Bomas.
Where's the 34B, Monica?
Yes.
Gonna take a break, come back. Keep tweeting, keep texting, keep letting us know. We're having a one-on-one, a serious discussion with 21 days and 21 nights to go before the October 26th election. This is a talk. This is the serious discussion. This is what we should be talking about. Jeff Koinange Live takes a break. We'll be back in a moment.